What's going on, folks? Welcome back to DCS World. Welcome back aboard the A-18C for another tutorial. In this one, we're going to learn the basics of navigation in the Hornet. So first and foremost, let's look down at our lower screen. I'm going to pause the camera there. What we're looking at here is the AMPCD. I pointed this out in my instrumentation video, the Advanced Multipurpose Color Display. Its primary function in general, because it's a full color display, is that it has a full moving map function. We can see the navigation map overlaid on the screen here. Now I can actually make this disappear with this push button next to mode, and I can disable the map. And now what we're looking at is just the horizontal situation indicator, HSI. The HSI is your primary navigation instrument. It's got the compass rose around it. It's got your ship in the middle here. And it can display information such as your upcoming waypoints and a sort of a sequential flight plan. Now, I've got some waypoints set up. The Hornet navigates primarily via an INS, inertial navigation system, and it navigates based on series of waypoints. So we have some waypoint selection abilities here. Currently looking at waypoint 0. Waypoint 0 by default is your starting location for when you load up a mission. But let's say I selected with the up arrow here, selected waypoint 1. We now have a dot off in the distance ahead of us. This indicates waypoint 1. It also indicates our bearing and range to that waypoint 1, and I can actually select that waypoint with this button here. And I can cycle through these waypoints. So there's waypoint 2, 3, and I think I had only 3 set up for this particular example. But let's just look at waypoint 1 for now. We've selected waypoint 1 and we've boxed the waypoint option here. Now if I unpause my camera and I look up at my HUD, I have some additional symbology here. Waypoint 1, denoted by W1, is 35.1 nautical miles in front of me here. On my heading tape, there's also a hash mark that's been added to the heading tape that tells me how to steer towards that waypoint. So for right now, that waypoint is actually right on my nose at a rough heading of about 083, and again for 35 miles. Unpause the camera again and look back down at the AMPCD. If I were to change to waypoint 2, keeping waypoint boxed, and look up at the HUD, pause again. Waypoint 2 is 43.7 nautical miles away, and it's actually off to my left slightly, denoted by the fact that the hash mark on the heading tape is to the left of where I'm actually pointed. A couple of other functions we can do down here with the HSI. I'm just going to select waypoint 1 again. We can add these to a sequence if by clicking this button here. And now we actually have a course line. So our course to waypoint 1 then goes to waypoint 2, which is roughly over here, and then waypoint 3, which is currently off the map. Now if I wanted to actually see all of it, I can actually scale the HSI out. It's currently at a scale with this indication here of a radius of 40 nautical miles in any direction from my ship in the middle. So cycles through. Let's go. Here's a scale of 80 nautical miles. We can see waypoint 1 off here in the distance. Then it turns to the left, and then it goes off in that direction. The sequence button is basically linking all of our waypoints together into a basic flight plan. I can also box this auto option here by pressing this button. And now when I fly over these waypoints, the selected waypoint should actually change automatically. So I'm going to zoom back out here And in fact, to make this easier to see, I can bring the HSI up on one of my side DDIs here. It doesn't have to be down here. The benefit of having the HSI down here, as I mentioned before, is with this option you get access to the moving map. However, as you can see with the moving map overlaid, some of the symbology is a bit difficult to see. So in that case, we're going to bring the HSI up on the right-hand DDI here. So it's a little bit easier to see, and I'm just going to make that dark for now. So I'm in active pause. I'm going to unpause and just fly this flight plan for the most part. Let me make the scale 40 degrees again, or 40 miles, excuse me. And we're unpaused and we're flying. Get a little bit of speed in it. I'm actually going to speed up time just a bit through the magic of simulation to get to waypoint 1. Okay, we're about 5 miles. I'll go back to normal speed here. I've got some good speed going. And once we cross over the waypoint, it should automatically switch to waypoint 2. One mile to go. And it just selected waypoint 2, so we're going to turn to the left now. A little bit sharply. And we'll get that center line lined up with the hash mark on our heading tape. And we're about 10 miles from waypoint 2. I'll speed it up again just a little bit. Magic of simulation. There we go. I actually overshot it slightly, but it switched to waypoint 3, which is now over in this direction over here. I think I have it over Al Maktoum Airport out in the distance there. So that's really it. That's the basics of navigating with waypoints. These waypoints were set up in the mission editor. I'm just going to go into active pause here for a moment and point a few things out. If we wanted to, say, add a new waypoint, I'm going to pause my camera there. If we wanted to, say, add a new waypoint from the HSI, we can do that. If I were to, say, select waypoint 4, waypoint 4, actually I had more there, waypoint 3, yeah, let's unbox sequence for this. Waypoint 4 actually has no information to it because it is not a valid waypoint. So I'm going to unbox waypoint. I'm going to click on the data button, and we can see here we can actually show the data for our waypoints. This is waypoint 4. It's currently unassigned. It's got zeros for its northing and easting. But if I were to go back to waypoint 3, you can actually see we've got coordinates here. So a northing and easting as well as an elevation. And this one has a name of Bullseye. I'll explain what that means in a later video when we talk about the radar and the essay page and things like that. But let's say we wanted to program a new waypoint in waypoint 4. I'm going to zoom out here because I need to use my UFC. Let's just for fun, let's go to the F10 map. And let's say I wanted to put waypoint 4 Al-Ain International Airport as waypoint 4. Now if we look, we have coordinates of the airport here. You can get coordinates from the F10 map, you know, just from up here if you like, or if you want to select an aerodrome, you can get your coordinates that way. So in this case, we have a northing of 241636 north. So if we go back to the airplane, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to AC here. I'm going to change this option from lat long decimal to lat long second, so that way we can plug in latitude, longitude, and the seconds value rather than a decimal value. So back to waypoint, UFC. Then we want to click on position. And just checking the F10 map again, it's 24, 16, 36. So north 24, 1, 6, 3, 6. Enter. Our easting coordinate is 55, 36, 42. So 5, 5, 3, 6, 4, 2. Enter. We can give it an elevation in feet or meters if we want. I'm going to give it an elevation in feet of, let's say, 500. Okay. And then we can go back to HSI. And now waypoint 4 is selected. And if I box waypoint again and unpause my camera and look forward, and also come out of active pause, we've programmed in waypoint 4 on the fly, and now waypoint 4 is telling us that it is about 50 nautical miles that way. If we get turned towards it, there we go. And now all things being equal and nothing failing, that should take us to Al Ain International Airport, because from our F10 map, that is where we got our coordinates. And of course, as I demonstrated, you can use waypoints that are set up via the mission editor. And for a number of your missions, you will have preset waypoints from the mission editor, so that's fairly common. But if the need arises, you can, as I demonstrated, program in your own waypoints. Just going to go back into active pause, and a few more things about the HSI. Pause my camera there. I mentioned we can change the scale. You can also add on TACAN navigation, which we will get into in a later video. ILS for the ICLS, which has to do with Case 3 carrier landings. Again, future video. Mode I mentioned before is you can turn on and off the moving map. From data, a little bit more that we can do here. This button down here, if we box precise, this gives us extra decimal places for our waypoint to make them more accurate, and this will come in handy later when we want to employ GPS-guided weapons that need really precise waypoints. These are accurate to within, something like 9 feet or so. It also shows us the grid information. Currently, we can't program in waypoints based on grid information, MGRS coordinates, like we can in something like the A-10C. Being an early access module, this portion is not implemented yet. And there are other functions of the HSI that are also not implemented yet. But for the most part, it is pretty functional for most of our use cases. The aircraft page displays our current location via the INS. So these are the coordinates of where we are currently located. I mentioned before we can also change the lat long from degree, minute, decimal to degree, minute, second, and then decimal if we want with precise options. We can also change our heading tape to display magnetic heading or true heading. That's important to realize because the magnetic heading differs from the true heading depending on where you are in the world. Waypoint page again. TACAN page would actually show TACAN information if we were using TACAN navigation. Again, future video. MData not implemented. And then back to the main HSI page. In the center, you have a little bit of information. You see your true airspeed as well as your ground speed. That's useful to know for your own ship. We also have a heading bug here, which I pointed out to in the autopilot video. This is just an arbitrary heading indication that you might use for your heading selector in the autopilot, or if you wanted to reference a heading other than your waypoints. And I talked about the auto and the sequence. We also have a WPDSG button here that stands for Waypoint Designate. This is the button we would use if we wanted to designate a waypoint as a weapons target, and I will go into more about this when we start exploring joint directed attack munitions, GPS guided weapons, and things of that nature. But for now, that's really all I have to say about the basic navigation and the HSI in the Hornet. So I hope you found that helpful, and I will see you guys for a future video. Take care.